I identify leadership as the ability to stand up and say, I'll do it. Now, what does that mean? I'll do it myself. I'll do it with you. I'll do it alongside you. I'll do it behind you. I'll help you do it, whatever. Just standing up and saying, I will do it, and taking a stand for something you believe in, if it's helpful, that's leadership.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. And at Abbey Research, we believe that curiosity can change the world because it's the only thing that ever has, honestly. And this series is in service of that. It's called Welcome to My World. And I have the privilege of talking to fascinating folks from all over the place who are different than me, which is literally every person, about something in their lives and that they know that if we knew it, our human experience would be richer. And today's guest is absolutely no exception, especially because there's like 12 things I could talk to him about, and it was really hard to narrow down the topic. He's a multifaceted, fascinating dude. His name is George Andriopolous, and he is an award-winning founder and CEO of Launchpad 516, a management consulting firm whose mission is to provide organizations with the tools and resources to innovate and thrive. He is also the current producer and license holder of TEDxFarmingdale. So in full disclosure, he once allowed me to take a stage, so I am a little beholden to him. And he has also kind of done a lot of mindset work, and that's a huge part of his story. His company has expanded to include digital marketing and leadership coaching division. And that's one of the things we could talk about. But what I really want to talk about is this next set of his incredible bio. He's one of the co-founders of Shannon's Fight, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to financially aiding families in medical crisis, volunteers as an advisor at Ronald McDonald House for the New York metro area. He's a basketball and football coach for the Police Athletic League. He's a supporter, donor, and advocate of the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. And he was actually just recognized by the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying as being essentially a badass. He hosts the Apple Entrepreneurship Top 100 podcast, the Launchcast, and he's the co-host of the Over My Dad Podcast, which makes me laugh every time it comes up on my Facebook. George, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Kristen, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's so much fun. So George, I'd love to hear from you about the importance of community in your life, and like not just the word that, we throw around a lot, but the community of Long Island, the community of Farmingdale, the physicalness is incredibly important to you. So I'd love to hear about that and why you're so involved.
Yeah, well, first I'm going to tell you that I am beholden to you. It's not the other way around, because you kicked ass on my stage and I so appreciated everything you brought to it. So it's the other way around, my friend. Yeah, community. So, not to dive into a whole vortex with this, but in my life, I had achieved a lot of success in the medical field. I was in the pharmacy industry for many years, did my thing, kicked some ass, and kind of faltered in life, personally, professionally. Just had a tough time about 11 years ago. That was the most difficult time in my life. And when I picked up the pieces, and it was just all based on, ego stuff and just, I guess, allowing my environment to turn me into a person that I really wasn't. And so I had to get back to basics. I had to reground myself. I had to focus on not only the things that were important to me, but the things that I was rooted in.
Okay.
And it was this thing that when I decided to restart everything in my life, both my personal life and my professional life, I was here in Farmingdale, where I grew up, a town that means so much to me. And I kind of, at that point, I took it for granted. I didn't really realize how much this place meant to me until I sort of did the trust fall and fell back on Farmingdale, and I allowed it to carry me and lift me, and it did. And this town is so special to me for so many reasons. But when I thought back to how I can reroute myself and ground myself, I thought about who I was before all this stuff happened to me. And I was just a kid from Farmingdale that really enjoyed growing up here. It was the prototypical sitcom suburb, right? With all of the hijinks that go on a good 22-minute sitcom episode. And we went through all of them growing up. And it was just memories that I knew that I could turn those memories into lessons that I learned throughout my life. And, you know, when I sort of trusted Farmingdale to carry me and my business as I started it, and it came from me, I was just forever indebted to this community. So I do everything that I can to give back to it, you know, now that I'm in a position to.
I love that. And I think it's so, especially because the word community is so diluted. It's just it's so diluted. And one of the things that it really stood out to me as I was part of your this year event, your last year event, your 2021 event, was how important the community of Farmingdale was, and how centered in Farmingdale this whole event was. And I thought that was really special. Which there's other TEDx's that do that, but I really, really appreciated that. So I'm curious though, like, this is a pretty wide range of causes you've chosen. So I'm assuming that some of the medical stuff is from your experience in pharma. You saw what that could do to families and how broken our insurance industry is. But the kind of the very strong passion for the anti-bullying, which is another thing I think that those of us who don't have kids in school right now don't really understand what it looks like. Would you mind talking a little bit about why that, I guess I should say?
Yeah, so it was kind of an evolution. Look, with my business, I have sort of let my business evolve into what it needs to be. Early on, when I started my company in 2013, it was kind of like, it has to be this. There was this rigid structure. We are a management consulting firm. We are not anything else. And we started getting good at other things. And I was kind of like, no, we are a management, because cut it out. Stop being good at other things. Like, you know, and then what I would do was like start another company, because we started getting good at like my marketing stuff that we do. We started a marketing agency, and we started this company and that company. And then at a certain point, I was kind of like, no, there has to be a unified vision. There has to be a unified organization that's running this whole thing. And sort of, I brought everything back into Launchpad, and I allowed it to kind of evolve every year into whatever it needs to be. I mean, look, 10 years ago, we were a straight up management consulting firm, almost 10 years ago. Now, management consulting, marketing, we started a podcast production company. I mean, like, whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
And so the things in my life that caused that evolution, I allowed those things to also evolve the servant leadership side of me and what I do. And so in the moment where I can identify something that I have a resource to help in, I'm going to jump into that. And that's kind of why I know when you read my bio, it's kind of like all over the place. There are so many things that I get involved in, but I just know, hey, I have a resource that could be you right now. Let me dive in.
I love it. I think it's
with
funny.
Bullying,
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to say really quick. I think your evolution in business is the same as a lot of ours in the 10s, where at the beginning of the 10s, everybody kept telling us that we had to be so hyper-focused or we'd confuse our audience. And then as we kept trying to hyper-focus, it's like, okay, well, humans aren't just one thing. So screw it. So I love that's a small case study, I guess, for all of us who are looking at how business and leadership have developed in the last decade.
Yeah, and it's small-minded, right? When people think like that, I hate the term jack of all trades, master of none. Because false. Yes, okay, I get it. There are some people that do that, and they dilute themselves. But when you operate at a high level, when you're a high level person, you immerse yourself in something to learn it. You put in your 10,000 hours and do the damn thing and just get good at it. Yeah, screw that. I could be a master of many trades, right? And so when you talk about the philanthropic stuff, the volunteer stuff, why can't why do I have to be one thing? Why can't I get involved? Look, I'm a father. And so being a father has taught me so many things about not only kind of being introspective and looking back at my journey and identifying things that have happened to me. I never would have considered myself a person that was bullied years ago. But when I look back at it, oh man, you know, and nothing to an easy extent, but bullying in so many different areas of my life. And then as an adult, a young, very young adult, being bullied into becoming a bully myself, and this whole cycle built. And when I sort of started to figure my shit out, like, oh, can I curse on this thing? I can curse.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Sure. Please, by all means.
When I started to figure my shit out 10 years ago and really go through this journey that I would sort of not reinvent myself, but rediscover myself, my true self, you go, yeah, there was a vicious cycle there. And I think if I can break free of this bullying cycle now and take myself out of it, I could help people understand how being bullied leads to becoming a bully sometimes. So, you know, in those instances, and I see an organization that I can help and that I've gone through something, I have some type of emotional investment. Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump in.
It's so funny that we're having this conversation, you and I, in the first week of February. And I know that folks, you guys are watching it in March onwards. But this week in my life, I had a conversation with another parent and advocate who talked about what you're talking about. We just talked about it in terms of Encanto and generational trauma. And her thing was like, I have been both Mirabelle and Abuela because I have parented out of my trauma more often than I want to. And it sounds so much like what you're saying here, where it's like, I was this person, whether I wanted to be or not. And so I can identify the ways that we can stop that cycle in other people, because it was not necessarily ever a conscious choice that I made. It was just the soup that I swam in. And I got to figure out a way to change the soup for people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I was doing a training for a client yesterday, and I was dealing with a young man who is at a pivotal point in his life and really needs to decide where he's going to go professionally and personally. And you know, I looked at it like I was speaking to one of my kids because, or, you know, and he's a father as well. And so I looked at it as if I was speaking to one of my kids. And it's kind of this thing where you go, hey, I'm at a point in my life where I can talk to you about these things that I went through. And like, you're making mistakes now, but I made 10 times as many mistakes. And I'm telling you this because as a human being, you want to be able to learn from other people's mistakes and grow from them without having to go through them. But then on the other side, conversely, as a parent, yeah, you can't stop your kids from making mistakes of their own. But if you show them this path that you've been on, and they can avoid those big mistakes and then make their own mistakes to learn their own lessons, it's part of being a parent. It's part of building that legacy, which is so important to me as a parent. It's not about, this legacy is not about like, here is my company, children, you can have. No, it's, hey, guess what? Dad fucked up big time, many times in life, but look where I am now. And look at life I lead. Look at the servant leadership behind everything I do. And yes, the one thing I will force you to do as my child is to learn that a life of servant leadership is more fulfilling. I'm not going to force you into that path, but I'm going to force you into learning the lessons that I learned over time, and then you choose your own path.
Yeah, I think my parents had a similar thing, and we've talked a lot. So, I mean, my brother and I just took over our dad's company, and so we talk a lot about legacy around here and what does it look like and what does it mean, I keep going back to Hamilton, which is like, I am your legacy dad. Like I am it, and it's, as well as this vision that you've cast, not necessarily the products that we make, but the vision that you've cast and the culture you've set and how I've been taught to be a human. And so I think it's so important. And yeah, I mean, servant leadership, even the statistics tell us that living a life of servitude out of choice and consent is the greatest indicator of emotional fulfillment. Yes. Kind of understanding, because self-care is not the whole picture, it's other care too. We need the self and other, we need the connection to community. So I wanted, before I lose your wisdom though, I'd love to know from your perspective, kind of what does being anti-bullying look like these days? Because it does feel so ubiquitous and yet so like there's so many other words we use for it, I think sometimes that is still just bullying, like online harassment or things like that. It's all the same core. So from your perspective, like what do we need to be doing?
Being educated.
Okay.
It is the number one, first and only thing that you need to do when you talk about anti-bullying. It's being educated on what bullying is,
Okay.
how people get bullied, how it affects them, how this cycle builds, how being bullied can turn you into a bully. There are so many different facets of it. The organization that I do work with, the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying, some of the work that we're doing is so incredible. Where I got involved with them is I had built an online platform for my coaching platform, the leadership experience. I custom built this thing myself. And it was almost a year of work to put this thing together to where it worked exactly the way I wanted it. And I saw an opportunity during the pandemic where this organization could really thrive with a platform like that. And so I duplicated it, I replicated it, and I donated it to LICAB in order to build something that they're calling LICAB University, which is a tool that they're going to be using to get into schools without getting into schools, right? To teach children, to teach faculty and staff, all of these, they've put this curriculum about bullying. But that, and that's, to me, it's how you get a head start in this. It's just teaching children at a young age what this stuff means, what it can do to you. And you have like Joe Salamone, who's the executive director and founder of LICAB, who went through this, his whole life as a youth, and had a moment where he almost took his life. And thank goodness he didn't, because he's gone out there and done some incredible work for other people. But had those people been educated that bullied him, maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe we could have broken the cycle early.
Yeah. And I'd imagine that some of that education has to be as well about humans ourselves, like that different people are different and that's okay. And all of those kind of much more harder things to quantify, but are still quite important.
Yeah, well, it's so different now because I think, and some of the education is about being reactive, right, in your initial responses to things. And, a lot of the cyberbullying that goes on is, I don't know if it's just a matter of age, a matter of reaction, or whatever it is. A lot of times, I mean, we're in a time now where this is different than when I grew up, 2022.
Oh, for sure. Me too.
And I think for the most part, especially youth out there, they are more accepting of differences. I walk through the hallways of my kids' junior high school and even the high school, because I do a lot of work with the school district here. And, had you walked through those hallways in 1997 when I graduated high school, you would have seen, 90% of our graduating class was white and looked the same and acted the same and wore the same hats and did this and whatever. And now you walk through the hallways, you see children that are trans, you see so much more diversity in color and gender and in everything out there, and interests. My daughter is what they call here a play crafter in Farmingdale. The play crafters are the club for the musicals and all that stuff. So she's still in junior high school. She's starting 9th grade in the fall, and she's in Newsies this year. She has a starring role. And
she's Catherine.
She's one of the Newsies. She's one of the bigger. She's not one of the main leads, but
that's so exciting. It's such a good musical. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and she does this every year. So I know she's going to go into it and she's going to be one of the play crafters. Now, when we went to school, the play crafters were a group that was considered weird and outcast and whatever. And now it's like, they're cool. They're, oh my God, it's the musicals coming up. This is great. And all the kids, and I'm like, where was this when we went to school? Like, we needed this diversity,
Yeah.
It's a more accepting time now, which means that when bullying still happens, it's probably deeper.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Right. It was kind of
It's out of like a
dumber.
trauma. It's a trauma response almost.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was kind of dumber when I was younger. It was very on the surface. Like,
Yeah. It was all the low hanging fruit. It was our names,
yeah,
what our bodies looked like, what we ate
yes,
for lunch. Yeah. It was all the low hanging fruit.
correct.
Yeah.
Now it's so much deeper, which makes it worse in a
Yeah.
way.
It's more
and so,
insidious. Yeah.
which is why we have to put work into it.
That makes so much sense. That didn't occur to me before. I mean, Aaron and I say all the time, like, you could not pay us to be a teenager with Snapchat. Like, you could not pay us all the money in the world. And we work with a lot of college students who are, you know, we have a lot of very funny jokes about like what my high school experience was like. And they look at me like, this is a foreign country. And I'm like, it is. The past is a foreign country. Like, we did things differently there.
Yes.
And that's okay. I remember getting AOL in my house for the first time in 8th grade. And I was the only one of my friends that had it. And so people did their college applications on my computer. They would come over and do their college applications on my computer because I had my own computer. And like, they all just look at me and I'm like, you used to not be able to fill out your college applications on your phone.
Yeah.
And they just like blink at me.
Like, yeah. Oh, I'm an early adopter. You're looking at Bull 159 right here on AOL. Hit me up on that messenger.
Nice. Yes. I know. I told somebody about ICQ the other day and I was like, we're just going to pretend like you're just going to Google that. You're just going to Google what ICQ is. So, man, I'm an elder millennial. So I'm an early adopter too, but it's still really strange. So, but I've never really thought about that idea of, because let me say this. We actually start my train of thought instead of introducing it to you in the middle. One of the things that we've talked about with this generation, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming up, is that they have this understanding of difference, but it's still, which is beautiful and amazing, and I love it, and yay, but it's still kind of stratified in a way where like they are still not quite understanding that all difference they disagree with is still okay.
Right.
So it's like they tell their friends, if your parents aren't okay with you coming out, cut off your parents immediately. Like, there's still that developmental black and whiteness that means that they can't always navigate everything quite as easily as it may appear on the surface. Right. So I really love this idea that we have to dig even deeper to figure out where the bullying is coming from, because it's mostly, I'm going to guess, fear-based, because everything evil in the world is fear-based.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We have this thing in my house. I am so annoying as a father and as a husband. But let me tell you one thing, that discussions that are not necessarily comfortable, arguments, they don't last long in our house because we handle them. We handle our shit. Like, we come face to face. Like, if there is an argument and somebody needs space, okay, go take your 30 minutes of space, no problem. But we're dealing with this today before we go to bed, and we are going to talk it out. And we don't need to come to a conclusion today, but you're going to tell me exactly, if you think I'm being a dick right now, you tell me I'm being a dick and tell me why, because I want that off your chest before we go to bed tonight. I am very much a believer, you know, the whole thing they say about married couples, right? You never go to bed angry. That's a thing. That is absolutely a real thing. It's not just married couples, it's any kind of discourse that you have. I am a firm believer that settles into you. That settles into your heart, and you lose a little piece of the relationship with that person if you go to bed feeling a certain type of way. So that we take this stuff head on, and maybe that's another reason why I just get involved with so many things, because I see, I don't know, you can kind of identify problems. Maybe that's a skill that I have. I can kind of identify problems within whatever it is I'm looking at, and I see a solution, and I can't help myself. I have a resource that can help you. Let me help you. Please let me help you. Let's talk about this, you know?
Yeah, I love it. I'm thinking, it's like, whenever someone says, you know, you should never go to bed angry, I always want to joke about like, well, you try being married to an Irish person. Because the thing, I mean, like, my husband and I are great and we do a lot of work and it's wonderful, but like, it was cross-cultural marriages are super duper fun. Sure. And figuring out how to communicate, but that's really important, because I totally agree. But at the same time, I wonder how we also create space for people that need time to process, And like, what does
Yeah.
that kind of look like? And so the narrative has been you choose one or the other. And I think really what you're saying is we can choose both. And we can choose time, and we can choose honesty, and we can choose discomfort, and we can choose all of those things to kind of work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, like my dad is a North Jersey Dane and is very like, no, this is how this is going to get sorted. So I identify a lot with that. Well, George, I am conscious that I've taken up quite a bit of your time already, and you've been so generous with it. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'd love to know, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah. My big word for the last couple of years has been leadership. Well, every year I have a word, honestly, but leadership has been the theme. Last year's word was inimitable, which you mentioned Hamilton before, and that came from, and I did a whole dive into the word inimitable, and we'll talk about that next time. Leadership has been the word. And I started talking to individuals about leadership because, with my company, it's companies that we deal with, and we consult for companies, and that's been our thing. But we started coaching individuals on leadership because of this type of work that I do. I identified that people didn't understand that leadership can be small. They looked at leadership as this thing that was so massive and this mountain that they had to climb to get to it. I identify leadership as the ability to stand up and say, I'll do it. Now, what does that mean? I'll do it myself. I'll do it with you. I'll do it alongside you. I'll do it behind you. I'll help you do it, whatever. Just standing up and saying, I will do it, and taking a stand for something you believe in, if it's helpful, that's leadership. And so I want people to remember that, when you look at my bio and you see all of the things I'm involved in, it's not because I'm trying to build some massive resume. I own a business. I don't need to build a resume for anybody. This is for my community. This is because people have helped me in the past. And I have identified that once I reached a certain level of success, it was my turn, my responsibility, not my turn, my responsibility as a leader to turn around and share the things that I had learned with people. Don't look at leadership as this big, massive mountain that is impossible to climb. Start one step at a time. It is so easy to be a leader and be out there helping people.
Completely agree. The Peter Parker principle: with great power comes great responsibility. And it's something that we live by here at Abbey Research as well. So George, oh my gracious, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks, Kristen. Appreciate it.
Pals, if you liked this conversation, I deeply appreciate a thumbs up on the video, because then the algorithm will share it with more people and we can have more people in the conversation. If you've got questions or comments for George, you make them below and I will make sure he sees them. If you like the nature of these conversations, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single one. My name is Dr. Kristen Donnelly. My guest today has been George Andriopolous, and this has been Welcome to My World, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.